It is the 2nd of December. We are back with Chelsea versus Aston Villa. We have got the Chelsea Christmas jumper on to do this video, and we will be wearing this throughout the whole of December. 4 videos based on Chelsea. So if that's enough to keep you guys around, drop a like, and let's just get into the festive spirit with some Chelsea football talk. In this game, we saw something a little bit different, which we're going to speak about today. And it's something that we've spoken about in the past on this channel. It's something that quite a few people have spoken about in the past as a concept, but we haven't seen it really play out properly under Maresca. But what we saw was, if we get the arrows ready on here, we saw Caicedo at right back. This was the team to start with. Palmer and Enzo. Enzo could be sort of your pivot player with Palmer as the 10 from the get-go. But again, what you sort of saw in the press, I will try and put up some images. So I'll put up an image of the press now, which sort of saw these two players, Enzo and Palmer, as those two sort of backing up Jackson in here. Caicedo had that license to roam inside of part of the press. And again, you had that 4-1-4-1 shape that we spoke about a lot under Maresca, in that heavy high line pressure that we see with the wingers having those dual responsibilities to put pressure on the ball, but also drop off with the opposing player. If the ball is on the other side of the pitch, if the ball is on the other side, Neto drops off, Sancho applies, and vice versa on each side. Let me get rid of the arrows. But in possession, the interesting part that everybody sort of wants to talk about when we're talking about these inverted fullback roles that we've seen all season. But I think the brilliant thing that you get with Caicedo when we do this is that Caicedo comes into this pocket, and we still have this same. Oh, that's not what I wanted. I wanted a box. Still get that pivot that we've been talking about for extra bit of physicality that Maresca likes it for. That is still very technically proficient, and he just likes having those two at the base because it offers him a little bit more off the ball. Again, back three wise, we've seen this a lot this season when we're spreading out in possession. This has been a very efficient back three for Chelsea this season in terms of on the ball, off the ball, their ability to apply pressure, their ability to defend the channels in Cucurella and Fofana, Cole's ability to orchestrate from that central spot. And if you just look at that back five with Cucurella, Cole, Fofana, Lavia, Caicedo, that is largely what Maresca is enjoying in that first team. And what we've now seen is a different way of achieving this. Because what many people had an issue with to begin with was with Gusto, right? And I will start by saying I think Gusto is still going to be absolutely phenomenal for the whole season. I think he's really been underappreciated for the role that he's been doing. And I do think he's going to be have a massive part to play this season. And I think he'll play a lot of games because I think Maresca understands how vital it is to have a player of Gusto's capacity that can not only link play, drive the ball, be technical on the ball, but is also defensively very, very good 1v1, can defend in direct situations, can defend in tight-knit situations at the counter press. He can do a bit of everything, Gusto. So I think that's important. But what you get with Caicedo inverting into the middle instead, let me go back to the arrows. We get from Caicedo coming into here instead is that now you still gain this pivot that we like to see, and you can also have your two pocket players as more nominal pocket players, which leads me on to talking about this box midfield, because the ability that this box midfield gives you is just absolutely ridiculous when you actually really think about it. What you gain here by doing things this way, and we spoke about this in the past, with Caicedo inverting into the middle from right back, you've got four midfielders as part of your box midfield. Now, what a lot of people sort of have nowadays in this sort of the modern era of football, the modern tactical era that we're seeing, is you'll see Vardiol as one of as part of a box midfielder. You'll see Trent, who is, in fairness, as close to this as possible because he plays like a midfielder. But you see Trent in a box midfield. You see Zinchenko for Arsenal in the past. Now you see Timber, Calafiori, etc. The point is you often end up with a more defensive player, which is good for certain things like counter pressing abilities. But when you have Caicedo and Lavia, who are brilliant at that as well, it sort of loosens the need for it, at least at the base. And what you now have is you have four midfield players especially when you have a player as special as Enzo Fernandez who can do a bit of everything. And then Palmer is just Cole Palmer, just outstanding. And you have this box midfield full of 4 midfield players that nobody wants to give any single one of them a bit of time on the ball because they know that they can punish you. And what happened yesterday, and I'll try and show this again now on the screen, is Caicedo's movement was dragging John McGinn. We'll just take a black dot inside. So this was John McGinn. It was dragging him a little bit more infield than he wanted to be, to almost attach to Caicedo. What that then meant for Palmer is one of the Villa midfielders would have to drop off to cover Palmer, or at least have him close enough that they could deal with him if that ball did go between the lines into Palmer. Or this player would then have to apply pressure on Caicedo, and vice versa. This player would then have to retreat, which is John McGinn, who's a winger, onto Palmer in this sort of half space. What this allowed is to keep these 2 wingers really free. And what Chelsea did really well in this game, something I've been calling out for a little bit more in recent weeks, is using that direct pass and finding these wingers and almost connecting dots on one side of the pitch and then getting it out within 2-3 passes to the other side of the pitch to actually use that isolation against a fullback, as you can see with the Sancho example. Let's get all this off screen now so that it doesn't become too much at once. But I think Chelsea did that really well in this occasion. And I think part of the reason for that is Villa couldn't sort of leave a man. And I think, like, I want to keep stressing it. I think Gusto's been amazing. But I think what you get with Gusto is if he's having a poor game with his sort of technical efficiency, is he might not be able to give you the same sort of end product. And we know that because he's not got the same sort of passing abilities and end product final ball of an Enzo Fernandez or a Cole Palmer. And we saw that for Cole Palmer's, for Enzo Fernandez's for the second goal, his first goal, but the second goal of the game. And it's just having 2 players of that quality in the box midfield whilst not losing these double back here. And I think where it really sort of gives issues, like I said, with the McGinn and Kamara, and they were really struggling to pick up and know who to mark and when to pass their man on. And there was a few moments where they was a bit confused, didn't know when to pass him on. And this allows these players to do what they're best at. And Enzo was just able to roam. And when Enzo was roaming into these sort of spaces, again, because players in the middle of the pitch, they didn't want Lavia to get the ball in the middle. They didn't want Caicedo to get the ball in the middle because he's coming in from that right back. And then McGinn was then being pinned back onto Palmer. And these movements, here, those 3 sort of movements, meant that if Rodgers or whoever was on the right at the time applied pressure, it's like Philogene, applied pressure onto Cucurella, Enzo could drop into this sort of little gap and be free because the 2 Villa strikers would be in here, or the Villa striker and the Villa number 10 would be in here to sort of block off these lanes. But then Enzo could drop into this gap, which is, again, something we spoke about a lot, is having somebody who can drop into this little space to create from. And that's when you're getting the best out of Enzo. And because so many teams are now bothered, they don't want Lavia to get the ball, they don't want Caicedo to get the ball, they don't want Palmer to get the ball. Somebody in your box midfield is going to be free on the ball. And if that player is any one of these 4, they've all got the ability to hurt you. That's not that Gusto doesn't have the ability to hurt you, but these 4 are natural midfielders. So what you get from having 4 natural midfielders in a box midfield is just that extra technical quality and almost just that eye for a pass forward and that bravery on the ball, because that's what they do. That's what they've known to do. That's where they've made their name. That's what they've done. Whereas Gusto, I think he can do it to an unbelievable degree, but he is still learning at the end of the day. So that is going to come with time. But what you get from these 4 is just so good. And I think the factor that you can now use Caicedo in this light to get these 3 in the same team, I think it just opens up so much ability to control games, because like what happened really well yesterday in the second half especially is Palmer could just sort of be free in this side of the pitch. Enzo was able to, oh, that's not the arrow. Enzo was able to just sort of maraud up and down this line. This was sort of his channel yesterday, and he could drop in, pick it up here, play a few little 1-2 passes, again, keep the ball, manage the game. And then he'd just sort of float into this area of the pitch. And because of the way they were doing this, and then Caicedo was floating inside. He wasn't doing it at max speed. He wasn't staying in this area of the pitch at all times so that he was easier to mark. He was sort of marauding in, stopping a little bit here. That gap was a little bit wider at times. Then he'd make sure that McGinn did attach to him, and then when McGinn did attach, that's when he'd make his movement inside, because then McGinn has a decision to make, and it's not an easy decision because McGinn either passes him on and Caicedo might have a few split seconds to receive and turn out, or McGinn follows him, and then Palmer's got a bit more of a free passing lane from somebody like Fofana or even a Colwill with a clip ball over here. And it was really just that Caicedo and Palmer show in terms of counter movement, ability on the ball, understanding of how to affect the game. And then because of how good that was, that then allowed Enzo to shine on the opposite side. So I think every little part of that box midfield yesterday had a knock-on effect. And that's not even just those four players. Jackson was excellent. The wingers really involved. Cucurella was phenomenal. Yet again, Fofana unfortunately got injured. But again, up to the 60 minutes, he was brilliant. And then, of course, we saw this became Badiashile. Who else did we see? We saw Gusto late in the game, but we won't talk about him because that was very late in the game. Madueke came on. We saw Sancho go off. Neto here, Madueke here. Got a nice assist. That's nice for Madueke. Felix came on. I can't remember who that one was for. Was Felix for... Jackson was obviously off for Nkunku up front. Who was Felix? Was Felix for Lavia? And then Enzo dropped in, maybe? Because that was when Gusto came on, wasn't it? I can't remember. We won't talk about Felix because, again, I think that was a bit later in the game, and I think we're going to see a lot more from him when it comes to this weekend. Not this weekend, to Southampton during the week. So, again, with these players, the ones that came on did their job. And Nkunku, I think, again, he's going to start against Southampton. Big game for him. But Badiashile was good when he came on. He was just trying to be aggressive. And I like that from Badiashile because I think that when you have a player like Colwill, who I think's really just settling into that role of being the controller in here, and again, he's very aggressive in the press at times. A few of the pressing images that I've shown in this video, you should be able to see, is sometimes he ends up here, and he is really pushing into these areas to make sure that teams can't turn out easily. But he is slightly more the cover man, especially in that central role, that it allows someone like Badiashile or Cucurella or Fofana, when it is him, to be that step extra aggressive, and Chelsea can then really apply the pressure with these players all surrounding the ball. And they also have the recovery speed to get back and help Colwill. And Colwill can just sort of be that central figure and impose in front of the box, win and instruct from that area of the pitch. And I think he's really taken leaps and bounds in that leadership role in that central centre-back spot as well. So the main point of this video was essentially to speak of just how good it is to have four midfield players in a box midfield and the extra little bit of excellence that you get from having that. If there's any other questions you have in regards to this video, I might be able to do a live stream tomorrow to not only speak about this, but also to preview the Southampton game. So if you'd want a stream tomorrow, drop it in the comments down below. Yes, we want a stream. Let me know down below. Drop a like if you haven't already. And I'll see you guys in the next video.